Morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Morning Briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest, along with Mike Lubitz, as we were diving and delving into the holiday spirit here, less than a couple of weeks away. And wow, just a little over a week away. We have Christmas Day coming up, and cause for celebration, or so you would think. And we're happy to be with you here on NoFilter.net. And maybe that's an important thing. NoFilter.net, very significant to the mood of the day. And of course, Caffeine TV and the other platforms that the morning briefing is carried on now and distributed by, which we're very, very happy about. I mean, we have reason and cause for celebration virtually every day, Mike Lubitz, which is why it may be time for us to establish something new here. I got shot down a few years ago, much to my surprise. I was at a time where it seemed like every story somebody told me, Lubie, or every conversation I had, you ended up thinking that the final line of the exchange should be, and you know what? Go fuck yourself. Have you ever found yourself in that kind of a mode where virtually everything that happens, no matter what the outcome is, no matter what the final statement is that the other person makes in the argument, your thought is, and you know what? Go fuck yourself.
100%.
So we got shot down years ago because I was going to establish a website called gofuckyourself.com, where the conclusion of virtually every sentiment that was expressed, every thread, was going to be somebody telling somebody else or a group of people, you know what? Go fuck yourself. But it was already taken. God, I don't know that anybody ever did anything with it, but you would have to pay like hundreds of thousands of dollars for the rights to that. And let's face it, Lubie, in this business, it's somewhat of a risky business. You don't know what's going to become popular or catch on. I thought that this was a natural, that we would have millions of subscribers, probably at some exorbitant amount of money, like $100 a month. And we would just be raking in cash like we were Joel fucking Osteen, right? I want the congregation just to send your contributions, no matter how poor you may be and starving. Send me your money. Best known, of course, for that scene. I don't know, would you call that entertainment or sports? Nick Wallenda trying to cross the Grand Canyon on a windy day. They didn't tell him that wind is also a four-letter word. And Osteen is on one of the peaks of the mountains where this guy's stuck in the middle going, holy shit, God, I don't know. Do I owe you anything? Because you got to save me now. There's no way, right? He's trembling out there in the middle of the Grand Canyon, and the drama is building. And there's Osteen, like making out with Wallenda's wife and with not a single fiber of morality or ethics in his soul. And he's asking you to send money, and it's outrageous, as a lot of things are on social media. So anyway, the point of this whole thing is, and I have to take my own advice, and that is, a friend of mine had poured his guts out on Facebook, which is one of the few social media outlets that I participate in. And I was tempted today. How many times have you been thinking on social media, that's it, Richard Steele time, somebody step in and stop it, I'm throwing in the towel? Now, you in particular, Lubie, have been in bitter fights with people that we consider to be friends, people that appear on our various shows as distinguished guests. When you were on what was then known as Twitter and now called X. I don't know how heavily you involved you are now with these sort of things, but it does seem pointless to be just spewing venom at each other from the minute. I mean, it's like the great Aaron Pryor used to come right across the ring, or whatever you say, and just throw a punch right in your face. So I think you've kind of gotten yourself away from that, which is probably a good thing for your mental health.
Yes, 100%. I will respond to things, but I don't really fight with people. I think it's dumb. People want to fight. They want to just waste your time. That's literally what the term troll is. And you're not going to do it to me. You might do it to other people.
I found myself under vicious attack this morning. I probably should let it go, which I will eventually. But being overly sensitive to this sort of thing, a friend of mine, so he spills his guts out about some trauma he experienced in his lifetime. And he found out at the time who his real friends were. And he was reminded of this bitter period of time, which was over a decade ago. And he gives all of his emotions, pours it out there on social media. A very good writer. The guy has, kind of an eloquent style for the people of social media types now. And so, he spelled it out. And it was sort of a grim picture. So one of my favorites of all time in terms, I think he was responsible for the greatest rock lyric ever written, and maybe one of the great lyrics and lines in any song at any time. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I'm a giant fan of the late, great Jim Morrison of The Doors, who was only around to be 25. Now think about it. Right? If
That's crazy.
Shakespeare had died at 16, would he have been as accomplished as Jim Morrison was in contributions of lyrics and poetry and thought-provoking ideas that were communicated in this fashion at 25? Incredible. So my favorite line that he ever wrote was in the song called "The End," which is a little bit of a gloomy prospect, right? But and he says, "Cancel my subscription to the resurrection. Send my credentials to the house of detention." How great is that, Lubie? I don't know if it means anything to you, but I mean, even if it doesn't mean anything, it's a great use of a rhyme of two words that you wouldn't normally associate with pop music of any type, if you want to call it that, or
He
rock
was
music.
rock. He was rock.
So the other thing I think, which is very important, and people on social media, you would have thought that I had denounced Trump as a criminal piece of shit on a "Let's Make America Great Again" fan page, where I just wrote Jim Morrison learned to forget. Which, think about it. I mean, with any problem that you've ever faced, Libby, is it not important to at least have some layer of the ability
No,
to
yeah.
learn to dismiss whatever it was that you felt about the past? Is this too deep for this kind of a sports
Oh, man.
program?
I mean, well, it crosses over into sports. We
Yeah.
talk about it all the time. I am still frustrated about Florida State, but I'm not thinking about it pretty much ever now because it is what it is. You know,
You have to
I
learn to forget. So that would be your way of dealing with it. Now, at a racetrack, it's particularly annoying, and you've seen this, you've witnessed it, where some guy with really bad breath, I mean, he just had like a hot dog loaded and laced with onions, and his breath wasn't all that, and his hygiene wasn't all that perfect to begin with. You're thinking the last time this guy brushed his teeth was when, Louis? You can picture a couple of these guys. I don't want to mention anybody, named the Leaper and any of the other people, the sycophants that hang around with these type of people. And what are they doing constantly? Whining about the fact that they had just taken a tough beat. You're going to get this now with sports betting. Oh, can you believe it? He kicked a fucking field goal. They was only up 2.5. And you're thinking, okay, I can't cry for you, my friend. Let's not cry Argentina. And so anyway, the guy will be sitting next to you at the track at the bar there, and he starts kvetching and moaning and whining about, oh, I can't believe it. I left out the two. And you're like, you always leave out the two because you're a loser. Turn the page. Here's the racing form, right? You just pick up the racing form and tell them, this is what it's all about. Learn to forget, my friend. You're right. It is very applicable to sports because, and yet we sort of resent it. It happened with the Miami Dolphins this past week, where a lot of people thought, well, geez, that's a very casual approach to a Tagovailoa, where you come up to the podium, and he seems to be pretty straightforward, honest guy, right? Very likable person to a Tagovailoa from all that we've witnessed, the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. And he says, well, you know what? This is the NFL. This sort of thing is going to happen. And the fans are like, what? You don't care? See, I never understood that in sports where you had to be weeping for days after a loss, especially in football where you don't come back for another week. You strike out in a big spot. I mean, what wouldn't the best piece of advice that you could possibly get be learn to forget?
Yes, 100%.
Figure out a way to get past it. Believe in yourself all over again.
Sports
Yeah.
as it is in anything in life. And that's actually literally what they tell quarterbacks, as annoying as it is as a fan to see an interception. They want you to, the minute you cross the white line to go to the bench, they want you to forget that thing. You can't remember it at all. A relief pitcher who gives up a bomb, a kicker who misses a kick. If you linger at all, it's only going to make it worse for you.
Sure.
You have to forget instantly.
I wish Antonio Alfonseca, when he was pitching for the Marlins as their closer, could have learned to forget the previous night when he walked the bases loaded, the bases loaded, and then finally got the final out and came in for the save, and so they went right back to him again the following evening. And what does he do? He walks the bases loaded. Learn to forget.
Please God.
But I was under immense attack from people that I've known for years, and everybody was saying how insensitive this remark was, that this guy could spill his fucking guts out and talk about something that was causing him post-traumatic stress disorder, and he couldn't let go of it. And all I was suggesting was find a way, learn how, deal with whatever it is that it takes you to learn to forget and move on. And you would have thought that I had called this guy an asshole and a wimpy, pathetic, just jellyfish of a man with no spine whatsoever. and suggested that maybe he mans up a little bit. I thought it was a perfectly good piece of advice. It's enough to make you think that better than social media, and maybe this is something that we can market now. Never mind gofuckyourself.com, Lubie. How about anti-social media? We just established a number of anti-social media platforms, and maybe that's the way out for us, Lubie. And then we can learn to forget all the misery we suffered at the hands of program directors who had no idea what the fuck they were doing when we were working in terrestrial radio. No idea, I assure you. All right, we got away from some of the stuff that happened though last night, Sporting World. How about Giannis dropping, what was that, 64 points? 64 points. You think there were any traveling calls that were missed on his way to 64? Your man, Joel Embiid. You're not a big Joel Embiid fan. I sensed that from some of your comments.
I liked him. This last year did it for me. The fact that he's always hurt, the fact that he doesn't come up in the playoffs. I was like, whatever. They were good last year. They had the Celtics on the ropes. Harden actually played really well in Game 6, getting them to a Game 7. He had a good first half in Game 7. And then in the second half, when they needed him, and
Brick City, yeah.
He did nothing. And I was like, okay, so that's who he is. He's a nice talent. He's fun to watch, but you can't count on him. And to me, if you can't count on their number one, then I wouldn't count on the Sixers at all.
Wasn't exactly Jerry West, is what you're saying, Mr. Clutch.
Oh, exactly. West, no matter what was going on, West came to play. His team didn't help him a lot, but he came to play. And B was the antithesis of that.
Boy, it sure looks good here as we get to those points, though.
Great in the regular season.
Embiid, 41 points, 11 rebounds in a victory over Detroit. The Pistons somehow, with Monty Williams, last year's coach of the year, who was let go by the Phoenix Suns and took over Detroit amidst great fanfare and much riches, $10 million a year, I believe. Holy Red Auerbach, is he the highest paid coach in the NBA? Monty Williams.
Oh, I don't know.
Might be. Is anybody making more than 10? You think Pop is? How about Spoelstra?
Oh, we're making real money. You don't really hear about it.
The fact that Eric Spoelstra has a cruise ship parked in his backyard on Biscayne Bay there, you think that constitutes any kind of compensation beyond his salary? Anyway, 21 in a row. How do you lose 21 in a row? It's almost impossible. And San Antonio tracking right in behind him, 18 consecutive losses. Embiid, though, the last 4 games, Lubie, after this 41 popper last night, 40.8 points per game and 12.3 rebounds per game, averaging over the last 4 games. So maybe this is the year that he learns to forget.
He won an MVP last year. What's funny is people are like, oh, it's a travesty. It really wasn't. Jokic could be the MVP every year, but Embiid had an MVP season. He just is and the playoffs. That's the problem is he does this in the regular seasons. Usually he's hurt a lot more. So I give him credit for staying healthy in the regular seasons now. But when it comes to playoff time, he's not going to carry his team. And his team needs him. Maxey had 9. Maxey, again, is a good player. He's a 3. He's not a number 2. So Embiid needs to be a super number 1, and he's just not. He's not LeBron. He's not a guy that's carrying a bunch of okay players to a finals. And to me, okay, that's fine, but Jokic is. We have guys like that in this league. So to me, and even Giannis at times can be. In the playoffs, he's tough because he can't shoot to save his fucking life. But he still puts up numbers. Even when he was hurt in that series versus Heat, it wasn't him, which is why they lost. He was putting up huge numbers in those games. Embiid doesn't. Embiid in the playoffs sort of fucks around, and until you prove it to me this late in your career, I don't believe it.
I hope it's windy in Las Vegas tonight. for the town's visitors, not necessarily the residents there. I know this game is being played indoors.
Oh, Jesus.
But there'll be a stench hovering over the Vegas Strip tonight. I think that'll make it seem like that there's sewage coming out of the Bellagio fountains. And you're sitting across the street there at the Mon Ami Gabi restaurant, taking it all in. And all of a sudden, there's a smell that's so overwhelming because the Raiders will be hosting the Chargers. Chargers now without Justin Herbert. I don't even know. I wouldn't be able to name you their backup quarterback. And, of course, you're already on the Aiden O'Connell. Doesn't he sound like an English trainer? Aiden O'Connell, the quarterback for the Raiders?
Yes, this is a horse with Aiden O'Connell, the trainer. He's quite the horseman. Great distinction here. Of course, he won the Queen's Plate at Woodbine. And it's like, well, who the hell? Aiden O'Connell is a quarterback in the National Football League? Sounds like he should be riding some jumpers in the first race at Saratoga. The jockey, Aiden O'Connell. But the Raiders, who scored 0 points last week in a 3-0, just a thriller in Manila, barn burner, as they lost their ball game to Minnesota, the Vikings, also in a very
period in the throes of dire straits when it comes to the quarterback position. The Raiders will be hosting the Chargers without Justin Herbert. What do you think? Over under in this ball game, Lubie, 34 and a hook. And yet we're so addicted, like we are, to social media that even after being attacked, having the very integrity of my character assaulted and assassinated on social media for making a comment I thought was relevant to the man's overall mental health. Learn to forget, ladies and gentlemen. Learn to forget. And this may be forgettable tonight for the NFL as they get the Thursday night thing. Does Al Michaels express any dismay and any bitterness about, speaking of learning to forget, about being stiffed by NBC on a playoff game?
He's a pro, but I'm sure he's not happy, even though at some point, like, when do you just tap out?
Yeah, apparently, I mean, delusional as he was thinking he was doing a game, and the reporter calls him, the story goes, Al Michaels, the longtime NFL announcer, supposedly was going to do a playoff game for NBC, or so he thought. A guy named Andrew Marchand out of the New York Post gives him a call and says, hey, Al, how do you feel about not getting to do this playoff game? And he said, what? What are you talking about? What do you know? Tough way to find out when you're reading about it in the newspaper there or being informed in that fashion. But I don't know. I mean, the guy had a great career. Is there reason to be overly sympathetic to this whole thing? A lot of people are outraged by it. It turns out a good friend of ours, the great Ian Eagle, his son Noah Eagle, who's on a rapid ascent as a play-by-play guy now on the network level, and he's going to get a chance to call that game for NBC with Nate Burleson. Is that his?
Oh, okay.
Oh no, with Todd Blackledge. They like Todd Blackledge.
Yeah, it's fine.
Who was answer to a trivia question because he was one of the several quarterbacks, the 5 quarterbacks that were taken before and drafted before the great Dan Marino in the 1983 quarterback draft. A lot of people, they forget about Tony Eason and Todd Blackledge. I guess Ken O'Brien, he was not nearly as forgettable as those two were. Tony Eason did quarterback a team, the Patriots, into a Super Bowl, although he bombed out there. Blackledge, who was taken sort of mid-pack in that draft, or maybe even towards the top, out of Penn State, never really did anything as a pro.
Nothing.
His pro career was probably less distinguished than Craig Krenzel's out of Ohio State.
Yeah.
Did Krenzel ever make a pro team? I don't know. Sure made, something that we need to learn how to forget possible, where he orchestrated that comeback win with Ohio State as Terry Porter comes running across the goal line there at the last second and says, no, that's pass interference, and waves off a national championship in the process. That's a robbery, Lubie. I don't know. I mean, you didn't even get a chance to get robbed. That's the problem with that whole Florida State thing. We'll get over that. We'll get over everything. People, message of the day is what? Subject yourself to, social media, outrageous, inflammatory attacks from your closest of friends because you suggested to a guy that was experiencing trauma to learn to forget. And that's what we have to do. I think I'm going to forget about this ball game tonight. As a matter of fact, Raiders and Chargers. I'll probably be watching. We're addicted to the NFL. All right, that's it for today. Morning briefing. Kind of a rambling philosophical lesson here today. Libby, I don't know. Did we accomplish anything with this? No. Anti-social media. That's what it should be called. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in to today's edition of the morning briefing. We'll have some handicapping input for you. Our handicappers have been hot that we've been using on our various platforms. So we'll infuse some of that into the program tomorrow and hope that you can win a bet as you get ready to go out and get destroyed financially with your Christmas shopping in the upcoming week. We'll see you next time on the next edition. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to the morning briefing.